Dylan, we don't have time. Shut up.
What? I didn't say anything.
Well, remember last month when we did a hybrid of FRAMEWRECK and Picture This? FRAMEWRECK This?
Yeah, of course. It was one of our best episodes we've ever done. Yeah.
We were playing God, and we flew too close to the sun, and it's escaped. FRAMEWRECK This has escaped, and it's gone rogue, and it's attacking people. What we have to do is we have to create another hybrid to go after. So we get Kelsey, we get Zach, put them together. Marvelous recipes for Mondays. We send it after it. Take down FRAMEWRECK This.
Okay, I don't hate the idea, but I mean, Kelsey has a busy schedule. Zach has an even busier schedule. I mean, I don't know if they would be able to do it together. Plus, it just kind of sounds like a cheap ripoff of the original. I don't know.
I've already taken care of it.
Welcome, everyone, to Marvelous Recipes for Mondays with Kelsey and Zach. How are you, Kels?
I'm doing so great, Zach. I'm so excited to talk about RuPaul's new role in the MCU.
Yes. And we also have to discuss this recent episode of Survivor where Thor not only found a hidden immunity idol, but used it to completely blindside Korg. One of the best moves of Survivor history. It's crazy.
Yes. And one more thing.
FRAMEWRECK!
What a story, Mark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of FRAMEWRECK as part of two big kind of projects we're doing here on the channel. One being the 2014 retrospective. As you see, I'm surrounded by all my blues of 2014. That's kind of when I started collecting Blu-rays, so that's why I have a lot of them. And not just looking at movies from 10 years ago, 2014, but also on a more sadder note, I guess, but more celebratory as well, paying respect to the great late Roger Corman, who passed away last month, and kind of doing a summer of Corman. So this kind of fits. This is the perfect like Venn diagram of like what came out in 2014 and had anything to do with Roger Corman. We made it work. We made it. We stuck the square peg into the round hole and made it work for this episode. Next month and the month after, we are going to continue doing like a whole summer of Corman, and those will not be 2014 films, but we are here talking about a 2014 film, Matt, that is a Roger Corman flick. So how you feeling?
I'm feeling all right. I'm glad we're getting to do this. Roger Corman, he's kind of the patron saint of FRAMEWRECK,
yes.
And really independent film in general. I mean, we would not have the independent film scene that we had in the 90s without Roger Corman just belting out these independent films in the 60s and 70s. Like that really opened up what could be done with a limited budget, independently done. And thankfully for us at FRAMEWRECK, why he's the patron saint of FRAMEWRECK is a lot of those, there's a reason they couldn't get studio approval for these because they were gloriously stinkers. And he's made a career. He's made some really good movies. He made a series of
Edgar Allan
Poe movies, which I've seen a bunch of those and I really love. Like they're actually ones that I really like. And then he's made a bunch of just stinkers, which is good for us. So I'm glad that we're getting to honor him on a show like FRAMEWRECK, because our goal in FRAMEWRECK is not to talk about how bad the movie is. It's about why the movie is great, even though it's bad. And so that's what I love about what we get to do.
Yeah, I mean, the definition of a B movie, it has so many definitions. You can't define it, but like I think Corman really kind of put his focus as a filmmaker into epitomizing all that you could do with a B movie and what a B movie could be, all the ins and outs of it. The original Little Shop of Horrors is Corman. A lot of people think the musical is an original thing. It's not. It's actually based on a Roger Corman film. So he's done a lot of like very influential works, a lot of works that have endured legacies, or at least kind of inspired more legacies. I mean, we talked about Ed Wood on this channel, being another one of those older kind of filmmakers in a similar vein. But we haven't really dug into like a lot of more classic FRAMEWRECK examples. And this one is not one of those because it came out 10 years ago. But him himself, he is very much kind of that originator. A lot of the stuff we'd see, like you said, in the 90s and thousands and stuff, is spun off of the stuff he would do for decades prior. He really was doing this, but at a much later date than when people started actually like accepting B movies as like maybe not bad movies, but so bad they're good movies, or schlocky great movies. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he really is a trendsetter in a way that also Ed Wood is. That I'm excited to get talking about, because while this one is, as I said, recent, there are very deep lengths you can go back in time to find these. Like a lot of the origins happen in black and white cinema, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And this one is produced by Roger Corman. By this point, he had retired from directing, although, as we're going to talk about in a minute, that he came out of retirement from directing for one scene of this movie. Wonder
which one.
He had retired by now. So to make this kind of work, we went with one that was produced by him and his wife. But the next two episodes are both going to be Roger Corman directed movies.
Yes,
so we're gonna get to talk a lot.
But it is cool to now like kind of look at the tail end of it, because also like now that cinema has become more like versatile, and we're seeing a lot more of these like straight to TV kind of schlocky, especially in this very specific subgenre of like killer aquatic animals. Like it's really cool that Corman put his touch on it, because even though a lot of these films fall under the same like Sharknado umbrella, I think it's interesting to see just a little bit tinge of like what Corman brought to it positively, and also negatively, because he is at the tail end of his career, and it's safe to say this is not necessarily one of his best films. It might even be his worst, but that's kind of the point of the show, is to figure out if we like it because it's bad, or if we think it's just bad, or if we just think it's genuinely good, which I doubt either of us are going to think about. Sharktopus versus Pteracuda. I always screw up the names. I always flop them around. I always say like Octoshark and Pterodactyl. Pterodactyl I think might be cooler than Pteracuda. I don't know.
That is cool, but you don't get the silent P, which I think is it's like, more menacing.
Like when you see a folder that says Project Pteracuda and it looks like it should be an alliteration, but it's not. It's like not, PP Project Pteracuda. That's funny. But yeah, that is the film we're covering today, is Sharktopus and Pteracuda. The puss versus Cuda, if you will. As I labeled the StreamYard before we recorded. Matt, how do we open this? How do we start this?
I didn't notice that until you just mentioned it. I think you're gonna have to put in a little cut of your
maybe.
Anyway, yes, how we're gonna start it? We're gonna start it with the production notes. Who made it? It was written by Matt Yamashita. I should have practiced the pronunciation on that before we got on.
It is your name, so you got.
It is my first name, so I saw that and I was like, I got this down. I didn't think beyond that. It was directed by Kevin O'Neill, and it was produced by Roger and Julie Corman. Roger Corman did come out of retirement to out directing retirement to film one scene, and it was the Conan O'Brien death scene.
I mean, we were talking about it right out the gate, but like I was watching this film, and at the end I said, you know what? I don't even know if I like it, but this may be the FRAMEWRECkiest scene of all the films we've ever covered.
I agree.
The Conan O'Brien scene, and it may just be my favorite scene we've covered in a movie that I don't think is anything too special. I think that scene, I mean, he directed it, so it makes sense. But we'll talk about that scene, because we'll
talk about that scene in a little bit. But
something else. Which you can all watch this. This is on Freevee. It's on like Sci-Fi. Like it's very readily available.
So if you have Prime, it's on Prime. Like so that's who made it. There's not a lot of behind the scenes stuff. It's a sequel to Sharktopus, which I did watch to prep for this. Have you ever seen Sharktopus?
No, I have not.
It's fine because the first 2 minutes of this movie.
But,
we covered Sharknado,
right?
It's fine because the first 2 minutes of this movie were the last half hour of Sharktopus, and that's really all you need to know. Well, in many ways, Sharktopus is a worse movie.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Good, cool. Yeah. It's funny because watching this, I was like, I think this does feel like it could be a standalone. Like, I don't think they're doing a lot of tiebacks, which is kind of refreshing for a movie like this. You want to be able to just throw it on without needing the context of watching a whole series. Something that I think the Leprechaun movies that we covered as well did successfully is not making it too married to the previous films. Until the legacy sequel of it. Maybe they'll make a legacy sequel Sharktopus someday that will harken back to the original. But I like how it kind of just this is the offspring, and this first scene was just to show you that this is not the original, but an offspring of. That's really the only key information we need, because as far as I know, the characters are all original in this as well, right?
They are all original. No one comes back from the first one, which is kind of weird, because it kind of feels like they could have come back, especially have the people who know about the Sharktopus come back, and especially that it's being advertised that they are doing a Sharktopus exhibit at this aquarium. That the two survivors from the original didn't come back and say, "Whoa, what the fuck?" But it's fine. Those two actors were terrible, so it's no offense to them. They were not charming at all. It wasn't enjoyable. That movie. Here's the thing: the difference between these movies, and we start off. You were saying that this is The Offspring, and they did a classic kaiju thing, which I wouldn't necessarily classify these as kaiju movies, but the word kaiju just means strange beast, so they do fit that.
I would say not to the scale of what we normally think of kaiju, but it's the same premise, I would say.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So in tradition of kaiju movies, the first movie, it's the villain. In the second movie and beyond, it becomes or maybe not the second movie, but a few episodes in or movies in these series, generally it will become the one who helps fight the other.
Right, another villain that is bigger comes in to fight. I mean,
So that's basically what this one is. It's the mantle this one is taking up.
Yeah, it's like the new MonsterVerse, where it's like Godzilla was the villain, and then he was fighting Kong, and we were rooting for Kong, but then they had to come together to fight an even bigger Mecha Godzilla that is the big villain. And now Godzilla's a hero. Now they work together and they fuck. I haven't seen the new one, so I assume that's what they do. But that's kind of or maybe they're just taking it slow. Maybe they go on a few dates, but that's kind of where we're at now, and I assume that's where this will eventually go if we were to keep watching these, which I don't think we will. But the only character I saw that I was like, maybe this is a crossover, is the Rib Hillis character, Hamilton, just because he feels like kind of the guy that comes in to be like the macho kind of good looking hero type, that I was like, maybe he's a pullover from the first one, but he wasn't either. So it was very interesting.
He wasn't.
He feels like one of those characters that they would use as a recurring,
that type of character the archetypes of these characters were the same from one to the other.
Right.
The first one was a scientist. The girl was a scientist who was like worked for her father, and they created Sharktopus. And the guy was the same thing, like the army guy who was a thing. Yeah. And this one, she is the person who understands Sharktopus, and then he's the army guy. So it's basically the same roles. Just these two are better than those two. They have a lot more charisma. And hold on, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're talking about great animals, so the dog wanted to get in on the convo, which I love.
Okay, so in the first one, which is something we like in a So Bad It's Good movies, we like it to take itself seriously, which I think this one did. I think that's the difference between the Sharknado the Sharknado movies and these movies, is that the Sharknado movies, once they understood what they had, they went silly.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I feel like, just based on the dialogue that we have and how it's executed, I feel like they were like still going that we are making this movie. We are not making a parody of our last movie,
right?
Which I appreciate. But the first one is a lot more serious, and it definitely it had Eric Roberts. Eric Roberts was the scientist's dad, who was kind of a bad guy, but not really the bad guy type of thing. And there's a thing with these bad movies. If you're trying to take it seriously, you hire Eric Roberts, and then if you're not taking it as seriously, then you hire Robert Carradine, which is what they did. But they did continue to take it seriously, which I appreciate. But yeah, I actually think this one was it was more enjoyable, and they didn't have to lampoon it to make it more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say I thought it was like a good movie. It's not something that I would watch would watch just on my free time because I was bored or something. Not like a Troll 2 or something like that.
Right.
But it was at least more enjoyable. I wasn't like looking at my watch the whole time like, when is this going to end?
Right.
So,
no, I see the argument for like it taking itself seriously, and that aids to it. But there's also part of me that like you can't unless you have like a really good budget, you can't make these fights. And I think that's kind of the marquee thing about this movie is the fighting between it. You can't make the fights not look ridiculous. And I think that's kind of the problem I was facing watching it, where I'm like, it might be the character stuff and the drama might be intentionally serious and like trying to take itself seriously, but like nothing in the action ever screams that it's trying to take itself seriously. Maybe there's some cool designs in how they fight, but even then they have to know how stupid it looks. So there's also that element of like, they go as far as they can go in being serious because they are still held back by the visuals and the Conan O'Brien scene, which we'll talk about again, I'm sure. But like, that's another example of like, did they really think that this was like a really serious scene, or were they trying to really ham it up? Like, I that's where I'm kind of still at a little bit of a disconnect, because I'm like, there are parts of it that just feel so like they're in on it. But at the same time, you make a good point. Like a lot of the character stuff, especially with like, what's her name's character? I forget her name. Her last name's Christmas. I that's how I remember her. We'll just call her that. Christmas. Lorena Christmas. That's what it is. But yeah, with Lorena's character especially, like they give her a lot of like meatiness, like especially with like the whole, all her scenes where she's looking back and she's like, wow, I should have saved this. I should have helped this. I should have, been, maybe I should have listened to them. I should have spoken up. All those things like that kind of feels very what you were talking about, like where it's really taking itself seriously. It's like a real film, but then just so many times it's like when the action kicks in and they're fighting and just the looks of them and the way they waddle and the way they're designed, it's just hard for me to think that all of it was taken fully seriously. But it is very interesting because I feel like with a budget, they could have honestly made like a really serious kaiju film that may have worked, but I think just because of the budget, they're never going to be able to achieve that. So it's very interesting to see what moments they decided to really take seriously and not just go full-fledged, we're in on the joke. So it's a very interesting, and you're right, it is very different than Sharknado in that way, but very interesting also because I think the visuals are even worse here than in Sharknado. Like I think Sharknado at least looks better than this. Yeah.
It's interesting because it does lean into some of the problems, but not in a way. Sorry.
You're good.
It's interesting because it does lean into the its own limitations, but not in a comedic way or purposely comedic way that these, which I think it's what makes it right for our show is that it knows that the visuals are bad, but it does not shy away from them. Like it's like, okay, this is what we have to work with. We're going to make as serious a movie as we can with what we have to work with. And let's go ahead and talk about the Conan O'Brien scene, because I think that is a juxtaposition to the rest of the movie, because a lot of it feels like they're taking it very seriously. But then they put this scene in and Roger Corman directs it. And this is the first time that Conan O'Brien has been in a movie, I believe. This is his film debut.
Yeah, and I don't even know if he's been in many since.
Lizzie, sweetie, what are you checking out that phone for? You should be feasting your eyes on this treasure right here.
Obviously doing it for a joke. He's not trying to be a great actor. He's not playing himself. He's playing a lampoon. He's playing a version of himself that is a parody of rich people, basically, of celebrities, which is great. I think that is put in there to say, I think that is the scene that they have in there to go, we don't have to take this as seriously as you don't have to take this as seriously as we are. And I think that's a good thing. I think that they that it was a nice change of pace for the movie. It was funny. I mean, part of the funny was how bad, like he's bad at acting, and especially at playing himself.
And my name's not Lizzie.
I pay you top scratch. I'll call you what I want.
And then
for me,
when his head gets sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, because for me it's okay. The scene's great. It's like, okay, Conan O'Brien's acting terribly. He gets like stabbed through the back of the neck, through the throat. The Sharktopus tentacle comes through, and then his like eyes bulge out, and then the actual shark comes and bites the head off. Then, and this is where the scene for me becomes the greatest FRAMEWRECK scene we've ever seen. They're playing volleyball, and first off, he's telling the volleyball guys like, "Hey, quit playing volleyball on a beach because people aren't allowed to have fun on the beach anymore." But he's like, "Stop playing the volleyball," and then the volleyball hits him in the back of the head. He's like, "Ah, you little kids!" And that's when he stands up and gets eaten or whatever. But then they continue to play volleyball. with the head of Conan O'Brien, which is very clearly a fake head that they made for the props department that looks nothing like Conan O'Brien, his face, and they're playing around like it's volleyball, and they're just like they're serving and spiking the head, and then it ends with the head in the sand. That to me, the volleyball. I think this is why Roger Corman's one of the best at what he does, is because he takes something that is like, you kind of know what's going to happen as soon as he's standing out there in the middle of the beach just by himself.
Anytime anybody has their back to water, they're about to die.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Deep Blue Sea thing with Samuel Jackson. It's like very clearly going to happen. But the cherry on top is the quite literal, bloody head being punted around as a volleyball. Like that to me is like what elevates the scene and really shows his twisted, kind of effed up but very silly B movie minded mind. Because you could end that scene with him getting eaten, done. But it's the added bonus of spitting the head back out and playing volleyball with it that makes it, I think, one of the greatest scenes we've seen in any of these movies, FRAMEWRECK asterisk included.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yes, the volleyball scene, it is the along with what he's doing, and then the volleyball scene. This whole scene feels like them saying, "Listen, we know what's going on." Which I appreciate that they have the scene in there and that they don't try to make the whole movie that. And that's one thing that I appreciate about it, because it makes it feel like a worse movie, and that, which I like, and that makes me entertained by it. I will say that I love when the head lands and it looks nothing like Conan O'Brien, except it has a red wig on it. That makes me very, very happy.
Again, like a cheeky little wink at the audience, because I don't watch a lot of Conan O'Brien. I don't really know his politics. I don't know if he's a good person, bad person, whatever. Like I don't watch enough of his stuff to know how I should feel about it, but there's just something so satisfying about watching that scene too. Like even though Conan O'Brien, he could be a great guy or whatever, but it's just so funny. It'd be the same if it was Fallon or Kimmel too. Like it's just like a funny thing that it's like this guy who's like, all the late night personalities have a little bit of an ego to them, and I think it's fun that they can like lean into this personified kind of fictionalized version of that, and then that cherry on top of just, and it's a big amount of time to stay on that head too. It's like a good 5 or 6 seconds, and then there's like that little blood that drips from the eye. It's just so good. Like that scene is so just. I'm glad the movie wasn't just that. It was a great break, but at the same time, I'm like, nothing else in the movie came to quite the level of like memorability as that. So it's almost making me wish there were a few at least moments like that, just because it's like the rest of the movie I think is honestly pretty repetitive and tame, considering there's not a lot of like really wild, like even when we were talking about the Leprechaun movies, there were so many great kills that kept us entertained even if the stories were thin. Here it's like that is the moment, like that is spoiler, the FRAMEWRECK moment that we can all look at and be like, yeah, there it is. That's the movie. And I think that's what a lot of the talking point was for the movie too, which didn't really help the movie, the fact that everyone was like, oh my god, Conan O'Brien, there's a great scene, and then people are waiting to get to it, and then when they get to it there's a whole 40 minutes left.
Right. As far as just to give you a little bit of insight on Conan O'Brien, since you're not as into him, and I think you were pretty young, I imagine, probably 10 when maybe 11 when he was fired from the Tonight Show so that Jay Leno could come back. I'll just preface this: I wasn't really like a fan of his show or any of his shows, really. Him as a late night person, he's great. He's awesome. When you were talking about his politics, he's a Democrat. Like he's not problematic in that way. His show, he's funny and it's good. It's just it never really appealed to me so much. So when he took over Tonight Show, it was like, okay, that's fine. I didn't really watch it that much, the Tonight Show that much. I watched some of them with him. He got fired. Suddenly, everybody in the world is the biggest Conan O'Brien fan.
Gotcha.
Because they're like, there's this whole "I'm with Coco" movement, because it was just this injustice. He got to be the Tonight Show from 2000. He got to be on the Tonight Show from 2009 to 2010. So I guess you would have been 12 when he got fired. He was on the Tonight Show from 2009 to 2010, and then Jay Leno, who had retired, wanted to come back, and so they got rid of Conan O'Brien to let Jay Leno come back. And it was just this injustice. So there was just this huge movement on the internet. And so that's really where he became like, because he was famous. I mean, obviously he got the Tonight Show, but he was never as popular before he was fired as he is now because he was fired.
Right. Yeah.
So
So either way, dunking on him in a joke form, it still feels fun, probably fun
It
to
does.
anyone
It
who
is,
was a
yeah.
fan or not a fan. You know, because I
Yeah.
think of like nowadays, like if James Corden were in this role, you know, like how much
yeah.
people would be losing their minds because either people I think really love him or really hate him. Same with Kimmel, same with Fallon. Like those are the two examples I think of because I know people really love Fallon or hate him, really love Kimmel or hate him. You know, I think that just comes with being a late night host. You have people on either end being like, he's great, he sucks, you know. Or she's great, she sucks. But there aren't enough female late night hosts. I'll just say that. But yeah, I think it's great. Great scene. But yeah, what are some other? Are there other moments that stand out to you, Matt, or what else is there to talk about with SHARKTOPUS?
Well,
versus
I just want to
Pteracuda?
piggyback on that last thing just real quick again. Is that I don't think love him or hate him. I think that one of the most beloved late night hosts right now, at least in my home, is John Oliver. And if that was John Oliver, it would still be awesome. Like so I don't think it's a matter of loving or hating. It's just like this guy who getting
my only question was like if he's known to be like a bit of like an egotistical asshole, like I think it makes the bit even funnier type deal. But it's honestly kind of funny if you are playing a role of being that egotistical asshole too. There's kind of a funniness to that as well. That was my only point. But yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I love that. Like when a celebrity can cameo for something, you know, so stupid and like it's a sequel to a sci-fi film about a shark octopus hybrid. Like that's great. You know, I love that.
Exactly. Me too. So let's talk about let's start from the beginning. And this is because the editing is not good in this movie. And the worst thing happens. Right. The worst part happens almost immediately, and it's a sci-fi original. You know, they aren't known for great editing all the time. Like the production, you know, there's so much you can levy at any of these movies.
Is this our third sci-fi original we've covered here? Sharknado, Leprechaun,
because Leprechaun Returns,
and this, like we've covered three. I don't know. Sci-fi, I'll admit, my mom, she at night, like if she's just perusing through the channels and working on her laptop, because she works with East and West Coast, so she has to be up at like late hours of the night because 2 a.m. is still only 11 in California time. So she's always on her laptop late at night. She just has a sci-fi channel going sometimes, and there's some gold to be found there. I'll just say that.
Well, I will say this, that this might not be the last one because sci-fi after Sharktopus went on this run of hybrid animal monster movies. So they've got like Lavalantula, which is lava and a tarantula. I know that there's I forget what all there's a bunch. There's a bunch that came after this that we might look into.
My favorite animal, lava.
So real quick, back to the Conan thing before we move on. That's fine. My favorite part of the first movie was that Ralph Garman, who, if you're Kevin Smith fan, you know him from the podcast Hollywood Babylon. He's also in some of his movies. He plays the bad guy in the Yoga Hosers. Anyway, he's also the voice actor on Family Guy. He plays this pirate radio DJ with this attractive woman in a bikini, and they just kind of talking, and he's the one who calls the animal Sharktopus, it even has a line, "Damn you, Sharktopus," but he's kind of joking when he does it, and then right after that gets eaten by Sharktopus. But their dynamic, their like sections were the best part for me, and part of it was I like Ralph Garman, and part of it is they felt like they were actually funny, and the rest of the movie was not purposely funny, and so that was part of it as well. But I thought that's what the Conan O'Brien thing was going to be. When I saw them come up, he's got a attractive bikini-clad girl. He's there. I was like, okay, so this is going to be the Ralph Garman thing. And then he gets killed immediately. Ralph Garman has several scenes throughout the movie. This guy just dies immediately, which I think also made it funny that I was like, okay, so this is going to be the recurring thing. Nope, it's this, and then it's awesome, and we love it. So
yeah.
Anyway, back to the editing.
Yes.
Almost immediately they fail. They drop the ball, which is that they show the scene of her finding the egg sac immediately after the events of the first movie, and finds the Sharktopus in there as a little baby. Then they cut to the scene in the with Robert Carradine and Ham. That scene where they release the Pteracuda and then it comes eats them and whatever. There is no indication that time has passed.
Right. Yeah.
They do not indicate time has passed at all. It feels like we're going from that to this. It's the same day, maybe, probably. But
Maybe
then
they
we
grow
cut
that fast. Maybe that's
but-
like, yeah.
maybe and whole exhibits in aquariums are built in that hour period. But he all of that is they released Pteracuda, but in the rest of the movie happens presumably that same day. There's no indication that it's happening. So when I watched it the first time, I didn't even notice. The second time, it cuts to it, and I was like, "Wait a minute! I know that this starts the events of the movie."
Mm-hmm.
There's no indication that the time had passed at all, and it has to be at least months, if not years later. So that's the first place where they drop the ball on the editing, and then it's bad throughout. But that was the first. That was the notable one where I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I don't.
Yeah, passage of time is so important. I took a screenwriting class in high school actually, where we like learned, it was like a unit of a bigger class with my acting class, but like we learned that like passing of time is the most important thing to write into a script, because that's what keeps it relatable and believable to the audience. And it can be as small as like there's a plant that is planted, like a little potted plant in act 1 that in act 2 is slightly taller, or it could be something as like you have a clock on stage, or like any little thing, or it can just be like when they start a scene, you mention the time, or so, like it's so important to capture place and time, more than anything else, more than the dialogue, more than anything else. And I think that's what a lot of films lose sight in, is just making sure we all know we're all consistently following, because it makes it non-believable in that way, because we're then left racing thinking about it,
Right. Or like in Hamilton, you sing the year at the beginning of certain songs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it works, and it totally works. It doesn't distract us and make us go like, okay, we get it. Like we're not reading a book, but it helps us. It helps us understand.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that kind of just that feels like that makes it feel like what it is, which is just this. They're not trying to make a movie for people to enjoy. They're trying to make a movie for sci-fi to air. Like they are making content, not film, is how it feels, because they aren't paying attention to these little things, which again, we talked about earlier, which is that like they understand the constraints that they have. They don't have to take this as seriously as a lot of movies do. So that makes sense. But yeah, they dropped the ball pretty early on. Another, and this is more of a structural thing, and I guess it kind of pays off later, but I don't understand why they have the whole Dennis Nedry storyline. I call it that because that's what it was in Jurassic Park. The whole like I'm stealing the thing and going on and then immediately crash my car thing in there, because him releasing the Pteracuda kind of absolves the bad guy in this movie of some of the guilt. Not all of it, but some of it, because like if it was we created this thing and we couldn't handle it, that is a better story than this person took it and wants to and the government wants to wreak havoc with. Like that's not as personal, so it doesn't feel as it's not as compelling. So that's another thing that kind of bugged me. Later on, it kind of works because he ends up deciding to work for the government or whatever, and that gets kind of funny. But yeah, that whole thing bugs me a little.
Yeah,
not enough to really care that much, but as I was watching it, I was just like, why do they even have this? Like it feels like they are taking away from the compelling portion of this story and giving it to someone else for reasons I don't understand.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Hamilton. Ham is what they call him a lot in the movie.
Yes.
That guy feels like he's never smiled once in his life, and that's how he plays this role.
Yeah. You want to know what I like in it too?
What?
In Toy Story 2, when Buzz meets the other Buzz in the box.
Okay. Yeah.
We're kind of when we meet Buzz at the beginning of Toy Story 1. It's like that serious, like he was out of the box. He's meant to serve. He's meant to be serious. He's meant to do this duty, and he can't have any feelings. That is kind of what it feels like. It feels like he's almost like a toy that hasn't been played with yet. I don't know what the best way to say it, but it's that Buzz Lightyear thing of like, you know, I've got to save the galaxy. This is a real laser. Until he learns he can't actually fly and he's a toy. You know, that's kind of what this reminded me of. Because he is, very fresh out of the box, very stoic, but not in like a cool, charismatic way. He's just kind of awkwardly serious.
It felt like they were going for a Clint Eastwood thing, and when they couldn't go for a Clint Eastwood, they were going for a what's his son's name?
Luke Eastwood or Robert Eastwood?
No, none of those. Anyway, the other
it ends with Scott Eastwood.
Scott Eastwood.
Is that actually it?
Yeah, that's it.
It is Scott Eastwood. You're right.
So they were going for Clint Eastwood, and when the guy couldn't pull that off, they were going for Scott Eastwood, and when he couldn't pull that off, they were like, "Just don't smile," because that's kind of the feeling I get from him. He's got layers of both of those actors in there, but he's just not. He's not reaching the stoicism is not reaching the grit which is really what we want. We're not really getting that. Two notable things about the character, how they characterize him, which is completely on the writing and not on him at all, not on the actor at all. Number one is every single viewer who's watching this movie knows why he put his daughter's picture up before they started flying. Not a single person was confused about why he put his daughter's picture up before they started flying. Everybody understands, and they know what he's going to say. Yet they had that guy go, "Hey, man, why you put your daughter's picture up every time?" And then he's like, "So if something goes wrong, it's the last face I see." Yes, we all know that. You're trying to that guy. What they're doing with that line is they're trying to establish two things. He has a daughter. And this is what he does it for. Him putting up the picture tells me both of those things. And which
is a smart device. It's a good device. It's a very
it's a very good device. It makes him
until you draw attention to it. Yeah.
It makes him more human. I have trouble believing even to the end that he has a family that he's ever seen in his life. But
that he's met another human being.
He thinks he's met another human being, especially one that he holds this kind of compassion for.
Well, I was going to bring up another aspect of the film, but I will wait till our best actor because I think that segues me into what I was about to say. But we'll talk about it later.
Okay. And then there's the part where, again, they're trying to make him like understandable, relatable, and sympathetic. And I feel like this fails real bad, which is that when she's asking him how he got into this, he was like, "The government taught me how to do things, and then they discharged me for doing them," or whatever. And so he goes into this life of crime where he gets to do the unethical thing because the government wouldn't let him. If the government won't let you do an unethical thing and you decide, "I want to do that more," if the government won't let you be unethical, and then you decide, and you're like doubling down on it, that does not to me go relatable. That goes, "Wow, so you're a psychopath." Like there's a show about this. It's called Barry, and it's awesome, but he's not okay.
Right? Yeah, it's very purposely, intended to be that way. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
So let's talk about the dialogue a little bit, and we can talk about our worst line of dialogue here if we want. Sure. This one is not my worst line of dialogue, but it does. It is the first one that made me go, "Come on," and that is when she's talking about her boyfriend, which we need to talk. We're talking to her boyfriend, which, by the way, we need to talk about her boyfriend real quick here in a minute. When she's talking to her boyfriend and showing what Sharktopus can do, that he can pick. He can match the cards from one to the other. Number one, how can Sharktopus see those? Does he see through his tentacles? They don't explain that in the first one. I don't see how. I don't know. But how does he see him? Regardless, we can move past that. But she says not even primates can do that. We're primates.
I struggle to find certain lines of dialogue, but more so the overall aura of like, if you're making a movie that's so based in science, I mean, that's the hardest thing with science fiction is making the science believable, and that's why a lot of science fiction is fictionalized. It's science that does not exist. But when you start to bring real life science and real shit into dialogue, you better make sure it's right, or you better make sure it's accurate, because then it makes the character itself not believable that, you know, she doesn't even know that she's a primate, you know.
Right. No, exactly. And when they do, it's funny because they do bring in they bring in some lines of dialogue that have scientific words in them, and then everybody around that's not a scientist is supposed to seem confused by it, which is fine. I mean, that's what you do in this type of thing, because they probably are. And I don't know what endothermic means necessarily. I mean, off the cuff, I could probably guess, and I can definitely look it up. But just the idea, the word endothermic, like I don't directly immediately know what that means when she says it. However, what I would not say is what he says, which is endo-whatic. Thermic was the part that you should have understood. Like that's the part.
What thermic? That's what you have to say.
Yeah, like that. But endo-whatic, and it's like, come on. And then there's a part earlier in the movie where I think when Symes, I keep calling him Robert Carradine because I forget his name, but I just remembered his name, Symes. When Symes is on his computer talking about what the Pteracuda is doing now or whatever, and he explained something extremely easy to understand, and Ham goes, "English, please." It's like, come on, dude, you can understand what he just said. Like, and it's
the movie I think it's trying to make the smart characters sound smarter by having the other characters question it, but instead it makes the dumb characters seem dumber.
It does. It really, really does. So yeah, and a lot of what Symes is doing is weird because he's like tracking him, but then they don't know where he is, but he's also tracking the person who is hacked in, but we also don't know where he is. And then he says things like, "Oh God, he's downloading the app," and it's like, you have apps for the Pteracuda? Like, can I download the app for the Pteracuda?
Yeah. That used to be like a phrase when like iPhones were like, I'm old enough to know that, like when iPhones and iPod touches were like really surging, and it was like, there's an app for that. Like the whole idea, like, no, there's an app for everything. And I guess Pteracudas, I'll have to go check the App Store and get that not just iPhones, sorry, Androids as well. My bad.
Yeah. Listen,
I've seen Matt's Twitter.
Listen. Brand wars are stupid, and I will say that. But you have and this is a funny thing about you, which I find endearing. But you have the double disadvantage or advantage of having an iPhone and living on the East Coast. So you forget that Androids exist and that any other time frame exists, like any other time zone exists.
Listen, whenever we schedule this show, I always know what time you're talking about. I just subtract one from it or add one from it, and I always respond. If I always respond with an EST, I will always put in parentheses your time, Matt.
I know. When it's the EST, when you put the EST, that's great. But a lot of East Coasters will be like, we'll just put a time, and then I'll have to say which is that East Coast or I'm like, anyway, that's not. I was just making a joke.
I know. Speaking of brand wars, though, okay, this is a good segue we could talk about. Which team are you on? Sharktopus or Pteracuda?
I am on Team Sharktopus, and here's why. Well, number one, he's supposed to be the hero, and that's the right thing. I don't know why they had him killing randomly if he was supposed to be the hero. Like he does kill some people just randomly, and not like the part like Conan. He kills them just randomly. And he doesn't even, it wasn't even food because he spits the head out, as we discussed. I understand when he goes back to the aquarium, which, come on, like, it's like, oh, we're fine, guys. He's back home. Like, just call her and tell her. And they all come out, and he attacks them because he wants her. Like, that part at least makes sense. But my favorite thing is something that wasn't in the first movie, and it's actually one of my legitimate favorite scenes, which is when the American couple, the tourist couple, or when she's sitting down by the water and the thing comes up and sways back and forth and starts hypnotizing her.
Yeah,
that was not something it could do in the first one, and it did it in this one. And I actually thought that was a really good scene, and that woman actually played that really, really well. That actor, which I really like. By the way, that couple reminded me a lot of the reason I call them the American couple is because they remind me a lot of the American couple in Sunday in the Park with George.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So I'm Team Sharktopus because I thought that scene was really charming, and I think that I do care about Lorraine Christmas, and so the fact that she cares about Sharktopus makes me care about Sharktopus.
Well, and I'll say right now, I like it because I think it's just a cooler design. I think the Pteracuda is annoying. It's like they make it like they have this weird screechy sound annoying. Most of the reviews I read were just talking about how annoying the Pteracuda is, and that's the thing is like you make a villain that doesn't look as powerful as Sharktopus, doesn't have the riz that Sharktopus does, doesn't have a cool design like Sharktopus, annoys you more than Sharktopus. Like some of the best movies, and we're talking 2014 retrospective. Look at Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. We understand why Koba is a menacing villain because there's a relatability, but there's also like a weird swagger that Koba has that we don't like. We're not like rooting for him, but we understand like he has a pull. He has something. He has this weird magnetic energy that's impossible to look away from. Here, the Pteracuda is just annoying. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to. It's like, if you really want this fair fight, I mean, look at Godzilla v. Kong. Not the best movie, but I think each party is well represented enough to where you at least understand the battle and you at least see the stakes on either side. Here, I just was like, no, Sharktopus all the way. I'm always team puss. So yeah, I was not a fan of the Pteracuda, and I think that's one of the biggest hindrances of the film as well. I believe that the Sharktopus, or is it the Pteracuda, like slaps the other one just across the face at one point. Like I don't even think the Pteracuda has good fighting skills. It's just like, bah! And I'm like, what are you doing? So yeah, I just thought that was a good segue from the brand wars conversation.
Oh no, that's good. That's good. Pteracuda, it's interesting how they how its fighting style and how effective it is at fighting changes throughout the movie. Like sometimes it's like no one's safe. If you're standing near it, you're going to get your head eaten off. And sometimes it can't even bite a guy who's standing directly in front of him, who's kind of shuffling back and forth, who's holding a knife that he never uses, and then runs with the knife. Both times I watched this movie, I was like, God, he's going to trip and stab himself. But that's the dad in it. It's weird. The only thing about Sharktopus, which is what I mentioned before, which is like, don't make him a killer. Like he kills a bunch of people. Like,
well, I do think there's a commentary though to be made of like, it is a wild animal. You can't tame it. You can't train it type deal. And also the idea that Munoz, Frankie Muniz, like the way he like kind of, when he like puts the chlorine in the water and he's like torturing it, almost like you make the monster type deal, which I like, where like Lorena kind of like nurtures the Sharktopus and cares after it and actually shows respect. But then those who don't, eventually get killed as a result. Like I think there's a commentary to be made about that. Like how you care for animals is how they will treat you, and how you behave with animals. You can't, if you fight one, they are wild. They can fight you back type deal. Like I get that, even though we're supposed to root for him. I mean, it's the same thing as like King Kong. Somewhere to piss him off. Like he swatted away those planes, but it's only because they came at him first. So like I do see that side. But yeah, it's I think a very one-sided battle for me and for you.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's one-sided battle. You mentioned you mentioned Munoz. I think that's the other guy, like not her uncle, but the guy who she was fishing with at the beginning. And like,
I thought Munoz was the uncle. Munoz is the Spanish guy. I thought, yeah, The one who, if he's not actually Spanish and that's not his accent, is doing the most offensive Spanish accent ever. Which is why I tried to look up that guy, Hensi Pichardo, to
Right.
see if that is his actual like accent, and I couldn't actually find any footage of him outside.
Right.
Of the
So
film,
he's not the one who owns the aquarium. He's the
I don't
other,
think-
right?
he's her uncle, the one who like puts the chlorine in the water.
Right, but that's not the same guy who I'm talking about. Well, that is the guy who owns the aquarium. I'm talking about the guy who is like her friend or whatever. I thought that was I don't know.
I don't know. Munoz is the one with the very thick Spanish accent that could be offensive if not.
We're wearing the baseball
the
cap,
hat.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he's not the one who puts the chlorine in the. It's the other guy who puts the chlorine.
Either way.
But I agree that very thick accent is. But anyway, because I thought her uncle. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The guy who owns the aquarium, who gets paid what seems to be a very small sum of money, and then just closes down his aquarium. Because when he drops the suitcase with the money and it comes out, it's like, okay, how long are you actually going to be able to live on that small amount of money? Is that enough to close your aquarium? That's another part that I thought funny. But yeah, so I tried looking at pictures of Munoz earlier today because
there's not a lot of good sources to find. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about her boyfriend, because I said I wanted to talk about her lifeguard boyfriend.
Absolutely.
I don't know what they were trying to do with him, because he has his heroic moment and then immediately gets eaten. And they kind of do this in the first movie where no one is really like, the guys are kind of shitty and then they have a heroic moment, and that seems to be fine. That seems to make it fine. Like he's kind of shitty, but not like offensively, like not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
His credit card gets declined, and for some reason they cut it in half. That was a staple in the 90s comedy, but I don't know why they're still doing that in movies, because they don't cut your credit card in half when it gets declined. But his credit card is declined, cuts it in half, then she has to pay. Okay, so maybe he's a poor or something. Okay, does that make him bad? It's not like he's trying to mooch off of her. Like, right. I don't know what they're trying to do with him. So when he has this moment of heroism at the end where he gets eaten, it feels like it's supposed to like resolve something that I don't feel like was really there. Like he was dismissive of her early on about the SHARKTOPUS stuff, but also like, I don't know, there's just not enough scenes of him doing things for that to have been a payoff of any sort for me. And then it feels like he just unceremoniously gets his head bitten off and then everything's fine.
I did find the clip of Munoz though. This is the guy I was talking about with the really bad accent. Hold on. This guy.
Okay.
That's Munoz.
That's Munoz?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I was talking about the other guy who also has a really thick accent, but look it's unclear if he.
Oh, Rico.
Rico.
Rico. Yeah, because he just called after Rico. I'm watching clips back now. It's very confusing because they make the most. That's Rico. With the
yeah.
hat.
Okay.
That's
yes.
Munoz. Yeah.
Okay.
That now we're back on the same page. Yeah. So
now we're on the
that's
same
what we were.
page.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah. So we're back on the same page now. But yeah, the boyfriend, he sucks.
Yeah, the boyfriend sucks. But like, I don't know. They don't follow that thread very well.
Mm-hmm.
So what else? Do you have anything else that
I mean, a lot of my other points come with like the superlatives. I think there's one line. I mean, you kind of gave your line of dialogue earlier, but mine is like,
I have a different line of dialogue. That was not my line of dialogue.
Okay, gotcha. But it's interesting because like my line of dialogue, I couldn't tell if it was like really bad or really, really clever. Because it's actually the last line of the movie, which I think is like a great way to end this conversation before we get into superlatives. But it's at the end, they're sitting on there and Ham asks Lorena, he's like, or where do you want to go? She's like, somewhere peaceful. He's like, Hawaii. And she goes, Kansas. And there's something about that line that's so dumb, but so smart as well, because it's like, most people would think relaxation is on the beach with Hawaii. But this woman who's now been through all this trauma, living by this water and experiencing all this awful stuff, picks one of the only landlocked states in America that doesn't have like a huge body of water in it. So I think that's like a really cool, like, final line, but also one that like maybe rolled my eyes. I was like, but it was also kind of charming. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was kind of charming, but also bad. Yeah, I completely agree with that. My line of dialogue, which we didn't really talk about, the reporter lady who was what was her name? It was something weird. It was Vegas, Veronica Vegas.
Yes.
Which just it feels right, but also lazy. It's weird.
Veronica Vegas, Lorena Christmas. I mean, there's some Christmas in Vegas. They're like, we can't think of any real last names. Like,
right.
It's named after a city and a holiday.
So Veronica Vegas has this line, which just feels like if an actual news person were to say this, they'd be canceled. Like, it not even canceled. They'd be laughed out of the building. Which is that when they're watching the news report, she says, "I have to apologize for the quality of the images you're receiving. My regular cameraman quit, and I had to hire a homeless man."
There's no words.
For the rest of that scene where she the report on the TV, the camera is just going all over. She's just trying to keep up with it, like this cameraman can't figure out how to hold the camera straight. It's bad, and it just feels so fake. It feels like a thing someone wrote, because no one would ever say that in real life. But yeah, that was my worst line of dialogue.
Nice.
But let's get into the rest of the superlatives, unless you have anything else about this movie.
There's one last talking point I want to bring up, but I want that to be part of the best actor talk. So
okay. Well, let's get into worst actor real quick, because here's a funny thing. I had Henry Pichardo as Munoz, but I thought that was Rico.
Well, no, I'm glad I clarified, because my worst, if it was a fake accent that he put on, is Henry Pichardo. If that's his actual accent, then I'm not going to give it to him, because he's doing if that is not his real accent, that is the most offensive accent I've ever heard. But if it is his accent, then that's fine. But if that is a white person, or I mean, he's still like Hispanic, but doing that accent, that is problematic. But if it is his own voice, I wouldn't pick him as my worst actor. That's like my asterisk, because he is very over the top, and he like really digs into the weird, like, the things that don't sound normal to the ear, that I feel like someone, if making a really bad stereotypical impression of a Hispanic person, would do. But I like to believe that's how his actual accent is, and I don't have to shame him for a terrible stereotype. But I don't know.
Oh God, these names are so wrong, because Rico is Symes, so he was talking about Symes, Robert Carradine's
so it's not
character.
Rico then.
So
who is this
by
mysterious
elimination, man? It must be. Is it Harry Smith, Hector? Then anyway, the guy in the hat. He has the same situation as Munoz that you had, which is,
or is it maybe Chip, Mario Arturo Hernandez? Chip, could be Chip.
I don't know.
We must find out. Luis, there's a Luis.
I'm looking at the main cast, and those are not like on Wikipedia, and those are not. So I don't think it's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's Hector. I'm pretty sure that it's Hector. Okay. Hector Thin, which is Harold Smith. Harry Smith was the name of the character. His name is Hector Thin. I don't know. Anyway, the guy in the hat.
The problem with the sci-fi films is that these actors only have like one credit to each of their names, and
so there's no pictures. If you look them up, it's just pictures.
Yeah, it's very hard. As you can tell, the cast list is Conan O'Brien and everyone else. Not really, but like he's the only really noticeable face and name and I guess Robert Carradine and Rib Hillis. Like they're the ones with like the IMDb picture name. Everyone else is like I think this is who I'm talking about. But yeah.
Anyway, so the guy that I'm talking about, whoever it is, has the same thing where it's like, I feel like his accent is not real.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And it also aids in him just not being believable on screen very much. And so that's why he's my worst actor. But we can move on from this debacle.
My worst actor, if Hensi Pichardo's actual accent is that accent, then my worst actor is Conan. Because I just think it's like the perfect bad acting for that scene. It's great because it's bad. Yeah.
I had originally written down Conan, but I was like, but I love it because I think it's
right. I love it, but it is the worst.
Like,
it's the worst performance unless Hensi Pichardo's putting on an accent. Then in that case, that's the most offensive performance I've ever seen.
All right, so same with me. If the other guy is if that's his normal accent and it's fine,
right.
then it's Conan. So.
Right. I've seen too many Rob Schneider performances to really truly believe that any performance is real. I didn't realize he was the guy in Click until we had this episode taping, and you're like, that was Prince Abubu or whatever. I'm like, oh my god, Habibu.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I'm so dumb.
Okay, well, let's talk about actors who elevated the material. Do you want me to go first, or do you want you to go first?
You can go first
because you got a lot to say, and I don't have just like a whole lot to say.
Okay. I'll go first then. I think Katie Savoy as Lorena. I think she's giving a really good performance.
I agree.
And I keep wanting to talk about it this whole episode, but I've waited till this moment because every problem we have with Ham's acting being so like feeling like he's never seen a person before. Munoz is terrible, over the top acting. Obviously Rico Symes is acting, which is fine. Robert Carradine's okay. But every actor she has to act against, the boyfriend, Rick Hoffman, who's also awful, Tony Evangelista, who's maybe even worse. Actually, he might be the worst next to Conan.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she is still able to give somewhat of an emotional response to these brick walls of acting is really impressive. It actually feels like this dialogue is affecting her. She's the person who's making it the most believable of anyone because she really seems like she has empathy for these characters, these animals, and it feels like she actually feels the gravity of her mistakes or what she thinks are her mistakes that aren't really her mistakes, but she kind of blames herself for. I think that when she actually sheds tears, they are real tears. Like there's something about her just being, and I think the problem is this movie sucks, so she doesn't get a career after this. But I really do think she's someone I think is giving a performance that is just, she probably auditioned, was really good, and got the part. Like I don't think there's any bells and whistles to it. She's a beautiful woman who is a really good actress and plays this part well. And I think she succeeds more than anyone else in this movie. And that is high praise considering how everything else in this movie is pretty bad. But I really think she's doing a very, very good job.
100% agree. That's my actor as well.
I'm so glad we agree. I would have been hardcore defending her if not, but I'm glad we agree.
I was worried that you were going to give her worst actor and I was going to have to fight you.
No, there's a reason I didn't bring her up early, because when we were talking about Ham, I was like, and especially because he's acting against her, it's like she has so much more heavy lifting to do because they're giving her nothing, and she's still doing well against
and her dialogue isn't better. She's just doing more with it.
Her dialogue may be worse. We even brought it up.
Yeah,
I mean, the primate thing, but she's still not like, we're not looking at her badly in that moment. We're looking at the dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So I believe every second of her in this movie, and that's important. I don't believe every second. I don't believe most seconds of most people in this movie. I believe every second of her in this movie. She's genuine. I feel the empathy that she feels for Sharktopus. When she feels bad, I feel bad with her. When she feels happy, I feel happy with her. Like it's exactly what you want from an actor. It is a damn shame that it's been 10 years and we don't. And she doesn't have a link on Wikipedia when you're looking at the thing. She doesn't have a picture on well, maybe she has a picture on IMDb. I don't know.
I found her on Instagram, and it looks like she now is an artist who works with using reused materials to make art.
That's great.
It's cool. It's like a recycling art thing. But yeah, she doesn't have a ton of acting credits, and it sucks because I think she's really, really, really good.
Right. It's a shame because she could have been great. Because again, like as I'm watching this movie, like it's a bad movie, but I am kind of in awe of her. And I don't want to say it's the effect of that this is a bad movie and she was a bright spot and that's why I'm in awe of her. I feel like she's actually giving a legitimately good performance in this movie. And that's saying something. I think that's amazing.
She has her contact linked on her website. I want to like almost have her on as an interview. Give her that spotlight again. No, but it looks like she's also taking up like writing and directing some things like commercials and stuff too. So nice. I mean, she's still active, but she could be a bigger I think, personality. Like if she were on like let's like say like a Grey's Anatomy or something, like, and she had like a recurring role on that, like I think she'd be great in something like that.
Absolutely.
But it's a shame. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why the last line of dialogue, as bad as it is, works, because she actually gives a solid, delivery of it.
Right. Exactly. And this is not her. I just realized it because you were talking about it earlier, but I just realized that that line of dialogue is kind of cribbed from the last line of dialogue in Jurassic Park 3, which is they see the pterodactyls and they were like, and William H. Macy says, "Where do you think they're going?" And she says, "I dare them to come to Enid, Oklahoma," which is notable because I was a projectionist in Enid, Oklahoma when that movie came out.
Yes, I believe you've said that.
Yeah,
that's great. I love that.
But yeah, so it's the same idea. Like they're not. We are going somewhere where they aren't going to be. It's that same thing. Anyway, yeah. So she's great. I whatever she's doing, I hope she's happy. If she doesn't want to be acting in movies, that's fine. I hope that she's enjoying her art. And,
honestly, if I were in this movie, I might not either.
Yeah, no kidding. We just want to make sure she gets her flowers for this movie. So there we are. Okay, let's move on to train wreck moment of the movie, and I think we know what it is. We talked about it extensively. It's the same. It's the Conan scene.
Yeah,
it's the most fitting for our show. It's funny. It's on purpose, so it's not your typical one, because generally those would come out of a more earnest place, but it's just it has to be like that is the train wreck moment.
If we're looking at every train wreck moment we've done on the show, that it's my number one. It's the greatest single scene, I think, in terms of so bad it's good. So I love it.
So good. I agree, and that's where we land on that. Let's talk about the score. How do you feel about this movie?
I actually forgot to prep this. I know my number, but I'm trying to think of what. Okay. Four volleyball bump serves, spike, and lands out of 5.
I give it 4 swaying tentacles that make me rock back and forth.
Nice. Nice. Out of 5 or out of 10?
Out of 5.
Cool. All right, so we're both kind of on the same page. I mean, it is so bad it's good. Like I did enjoy minutes and moments of this. The problem is, like, I think that scene elevates a lot of the rest of the movie for me. But it does. So
right. And as we mentioned, like Katie Savoy making it entertaining, helping make it entertaining helps with the badness, or helps with the entertainment value of it. So I agree. I think it's there. That's where we land. Mount Trashmore. These are the Mount Trashmore is the 4 so bad they're good movies that represent the so bad it's good movie genre. It is our totem, our idol, our statue to this genre. And let's discuss, does this movie belong on it?
I mean, we got The Room, we got Troll 2, we got Plane 9 from Outer Space, and we got Ben and Arthur. I personally don't think it belongs, but this has a better case than a lot of the movies we've covered the last few months. I
agree. It has a better case. I don't think it. I mean, it doesn't get there. Honestly, it's not super close. When you mention those, it's like, okay, it's not in that same league.
If we were to do like a top 10, it's in the top 10, but it's not on the Mount Rushmore. I think it's closer to it than Sharknado.
No, I agree.
I
agree.
Yeah, 100%. I think it succeeds in the so bad it's good better than Sharknado, but yeah, just no, not it. Sorry, Mr. Corman. May you rest in peace. Anything else on Sharktopus versus Pteracuda, Matt, before we wrap this one up?
Nope. All we need to talk about legacy, and there's really only one thing to speak of, which is that it has a sequel, Sharktopus versus Whalewolf.
It's so
which
good.
the name alone is.
We're doing this again next year, this 10-year retrospective. We may have to follow through because the Whalewolf design is just, I mean, it almost doesn't even look like a whale. It just kind of looks like a wolf dolphin.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I
don't know.
Yeah.
It looks amazing, and again, no one returns from Casper Van Dien is in it from Starship.
Yeah,
Troopers,
I saw that. Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah.
Which is really interesting because they got basically for these 3 movies, they basically got the holy trinity of actors who have fallen far enough that they are in these type of movies, which is
Right.
Eric Roberts, Robert Carradine, and then Casper Van Dien. So yeah, that's fun. So let's talk about next month. Next month, we're continuing our Summer of Corman, and we're going to talk about one of his earliest ones, or one of his early ones. I don't think it's his first. I don't know if it's his first one. I should probably have decided that. Anyway, one of his earliest movies. The one that is often considered his worst movie. One that is sometimes considered the worst movie. And that is Teenage Caveman. I believe 1956.
It is his 20th film. It is his 20th.
His 20th film. Jeez.
Yes, but he, just for context, he starts in 1955, and this was made in 1958. So he has made 30 films, or 20 films by 58 in just 3 years. So that should tell you all you need to know about Corman. But yeah, this is one of his earliest films. It is his 20th film, but it is in the first 3 years of him directing. So very interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna watch Teenage Caveman. We are probably gonna have a guest. Chris Scott. I believe as of right now, we are definitely gonna have Chris Scott on here. We'll see how that.
There we go.
But yeah, so Chris Baker Scott, excuse me.
Yes.
Is going to be on with us to talk about Teenage Caveman.
Cool. That's it for me today, Matt. Anything else for you?
No, I enjoyed this discussion. I'm so glad we got to talk about Kate Savoy. So there we are.
There we go. Thank you guys for watching. We are also throughout the summer going to try to get you at least a few of the commentary tracks that we've been promised. We will be starting with our Troll 2 commentary track, which we promised last subathon. I got a lot of catching up to do. It's been about a year, but we're finally in the groove of it. We're actually recording that later today, so you should be getting that shortly. But also stay tuned for other stuff on the Retrospective. You can check out my Letterboxd, Dylan Randazzo, for full reviews of films I've been watching, and then I will be doing some videos here on the channel. Including a picture of this episode with Chad, where I'm covering the 2014 nominees, including more commentaries with Kelsey, where I'm talking about movies from 2014 that were Marvel based, including TASM 2, which we're going to do a cool video for as well. We are also doing, and I'm doing my year 2 A24 review and ranking, and then we'll do some sort of, I have an interesting premise of a draft that I'm going to kind of toss out there to the host to see if they like the idea, because Draft Day came out in 2014. So there's something to be said about that. But also Into the Woods came out in 2014. So we are also going to be doing this month our Sondheim draft that has been longly anticipated. Matt will be on it. I will be on it. And 3 guests talking about Sondheim musicals in honor of that as well. So a lot of cool 2014 stuff coming on. So if you have any questions or suggestions of things we can cover for the 2014 retrospective, or that you want to see me watch, check that out. And also check out our Dyl Pickle Movie Network Discord, where I made a 2014 channel for everyone to put their reviews in. No one's reviewed anything yet, but it's okay. But to put just their thoughts on 2014 films in there. So there's a whole channel for that you can check out there via text. We're really trying to expand the Discord and the Facebook page, so check out our Facebook page as well. Otherwise, Matt, this has been a lot of fun. Team Sharktopus, Team Puss all the way. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you very soon.
What a story, Mark.
How are you, Kels?
I'm doing so good, Dyl. I'm so excited to talk about RuPaul's new. I said Dyl.
Do it again. Do it again. You said Dyl.
Sorry, my brain
Brain
just went into Dyl. And that was such a good take too. I'm so sorry I ruined it. I really felt that one in my bones.